I'm Husney. I'm the executive producer of Dark Side of the Ring. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Breaking Elements, The Ring. See the season 7 premiere of our show. It's hard to believe it's 7 seasons, but tonight we're going to be watching the first 2 parts of the Jeff Jarrett and the TNA saga. The third part will premiere next week on TV, on Vice TV, of course. So I'm just going to give just a quick little intro here, but I want to bring up a few people here, important people that are here tonight. Please give a round of applause for Jericho is here.
Thank you so much for joining us here, the premiere for the 7th season of Dark Side of the Ring. We can't believe that it's been 7 seasons. We were talking earlier, I narrated 63 episodes of this show, including the 2 that you're going to see tonight. So, and we were saying this earlier as well, that this year, this season, the buzz for the show is bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate you guys being here tonight to check this out.
Yes.
It's very exclusive. We've never done this before.
No.
First time ever here in New York City. You've never seen shows on the big screen, which I've never seen them on the big screen either.
Right. Yeah, it's like and
then after we watch these shows, we will do a Q&A for you guys. So think of some good Q's, and we'll think of some better A's. And the subject of tonight's double feature, of course, is TNA, Impact Wrestling. And the guest of honor tonight is the former president, head, and creator of TNA Impact Wrestling. He's here right now, Mr. Jeff Jarrett.
Season 7, it's pretty cool. When Evan first approached me, and I've already told this story a couple of times, I was a little bit, I don't know, I wasn't real sure of it, but the Owen story, there's a few others in there, and I'm not kidding because he's standing here, but Jericho's voice, adding the authenticity to it, I'm like, all right, let me hear him out. And so it's been quite the emotional roller coaster, I'll say that. Really having to relive quite a bit of pardon the pun, some dark sides of my life, not really just my career, but my entire life. But hats off to the entire Dark Side team, and I sincerely hope you guys enjoy it. At the very core, I'm a wrestling fan, so is Karen. We're wrestling junkies, we're wrestling lifers, and so at the end of the day, that's what we all have in common. So I appreciate you coming out and supporting professional wrestling.
Show. It's the first 2 parts, of course, of the TNA Jeff Jarrett saga, and we'll be back here right after for a Q&A, so don't go anywhere. And I guess we'll see.
And remember, we're going to be up there watching, so you guys have to cheer and laugh and pretend it's the greatest thing you've ever seen. Because it is! Here we go!
Coming back up here, give an applause for Jeff Jarrett. Chris Jericho.
What did you think, guys? That was good. What a great opening 2 episodes.
I was just telling Chris as we were coming down the steps in the City Mutual Admiration Society, but shout out, and not just what he says, and I know these guys are the ones that write it and they collaborate, but Chris is kind of, he gives maybe a little base of the authenticity, the drama. It really does, because I've seen screeners, and as you know, going through it, and there's probably I don't know. There's some doc footage in there behind the scenes. I don't know if y'all saw Brian Christopher, and the gentleman that Brian was talking to was my grandfather, so I got emotional seeing that. It was just kind of all that, but the narration and how it all came together, it was emotional again, watching it there, so kudos to
All of you.
Chris and Evan and
Let me ask a question to both Jarrett and Jeff. How is it for you guys to see this story? Because it's just as much your story as it is the TNA story. And it's raw and it's bare, and it gets even rawer in episode 3. How is it to watch it in a room full of people like this and seeing it all up there?
uncomfortable. Just like, again, a wrestling fan, the cornet lines, I chuckle at. Awesome calm, kind of the natural beats that these guys put in there, but,
That's who they really are.
but, I mean, it
They're not
is.
performing,
But
it's who they are.
again tonight, when I watch Scott Steiner, and I'll get emotional, he's just.
Little
weird.
backstory, Scott was best friends with Jill. So there was a really close relationship.
And you'll like this, Chris, but if you know Scott, his own wife, his own mother, Robbie, his brother, you don't talk bad to Scott, you just don't. Jill never cussed, but she would lay into him. They had a good relationship, but there were some emotional parts in there, and same again, when I watch it back, you damn right. I've forgiven Dixie, but.
I'm gonna cut you off, because you said that name on the slide.
Go ahead, Chris, stand back over.
To be honest, in the beginning of this, when Jeff asked me, I was completely against it. And then he was like, well, it can either be about TNA without Jeff, or it can be about TNA with Jeff. And obviously I love this man more than anything. So here I am. But throughout this process, I found out a lot of things that I didn't even know, that I was not aware of. I guess because we never discussed it, and I was off limits to discussing it with anyone else, it was our private life. So I thought that the problems with Dixie started with us, with that whole situation. I had no idea that they started back when Jill was diagnosed with cancer, or that there were power plays made when Jill passed away. So there's new venom spewing all over the place. But at the same time, it's all very therapeutic, I think. And I'm glad we did it.
I think there's a reputation that Evan Husney is the creator and the
Brilliant.
But I think he built up a real level of respect. And this started how I got involved with this show, was when you guys were in season 2 doing the Chris Benoit show. And Chavo Guerrero called me and said, "They're doing this show about Chris." And I was like, "Dude, I've done enough shows about Chris, I don't want to be involved." He said, "The same thing that you just said, Karen. They can either do it with our involvement or without. Either way, they're doing it." And then talking with Evan and Jason and realizing these guys really do respect the business and understand it. Suddenly then I get involved to start narrating. And another one was with Martha getting involved with the Owen Hart show. The first time I've ever seen Martha and Oj and Athena talk about Owen's passing and Owen's life. Suddenly now you've got a whole fortress of like, well, who else has done it? Well, it doesn't get any bigger than Martha Hart, right? So I think for you, Karen, to say be completely against it, but then you look at the history of the show, suddenly who wouldn't want to be involved with this? Because every one of the shows is done with the ultimate respect for the subject and the people involved.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So here's Evan.
Yeah, I mean, this crazy journey to get to where we are here with this, because I don't think you knew about this until recently, but behind the scenes over the last couple of years, we wanted to do this as a standalone 6-hour program was how we envisioned it originally. It's called like the 6 sides to TNA. And it was going to be the whole story, not just the Jeff years, but the Dixie years, the Billy Corgan years, maybe even the modern era, Scott Moore, all that stuff. And it was going to be kind of a spin-off thing. And but when we pitched advice, it was sort of like, well, Dark Side's the brand. Dark Side's doing really well. Could you guys do this for Dark Side? I don't know how we could fit that story into our format. So we thought, well, if we could kind of center it around Jeff, the Jeff story, his trajectory through this company, there's a lot of, very dramatic and emotional beats throughout just the rise of this company. And so we started out doing it as a 2-hour show. We've done 2-hour shows in the past. And so we did that, we started ending it, and it was a couple months ago, we were like, this is not gonna work. Because it was like really condensed, we were, breezing past things, cutting things out, and I was getting really worried, really panicked, and so we begged and pleaded to get Ken to get a 3rd hour for the show, and I'm so glad that we did, because even though we didn't start all over.
Shout out, Peter, give
Go
it
ahead.
a 3rd hour.
But yeah, thank God for that, because this would be a little bit of a show without that. But now it's our most epic thing we've ever done in length for this show, so pretty cool.
I think there's so much more to it as well, to enable to be 3 hours. We were talking with a lot of you earlier, how yes, it is the story of TNA and Impact Wrestling, which of course is the story of Jeff, but Jeff's story is so deep and involved, even going back to your father and Owen and Karen and the trials and tribulations of all that, and then we get to your addictions, which we focus on a little more in episode 3. So it really is a combination impact, but also the Jeff Jarrett story of a guy who's been in the business your whole life and has 3 generations of people that have run these businesses and run this business. So there's so much more that makes it easy to get 3 hours out of it, or 3 hours out of it.
Yeah. The footage, me in the ring, refereeing, just a little bit, me sitting down, there's a little piece of God. I sound like a hillbilly now. As a 19-year-old, I really sound like a hillbilly. But I was reading that poem, Don't Quit. That was that promo when I said, breaking into business. That promo, that poem that I read in that promo that my dad had me read, I read that at his funeral. So there's so many kind of emotional pieces that, yes, for me personally going through it, that we touched on, and the Hardys and so many people gave their time to make this. So I'm grateful for all that as well.
Thank you.
I also look at Strong's, and I think of Von Erichs, and I think of like all of these kids who were sons of promoters. You know what it's like. We don't know what that's like. Only the few, like you and Greg Gagne and Owen and Brian Armstrong and wherever can sit down and have an art bar or have a conversation about this. But most people would never understand that.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're supposed to be doing Q&A. I feel like, but I could go into that story alone right there with me and Owen, because I'll never forget it. Brett, he'd already been champion. Him, Owen, come to Memphis. We're still running the territory. Brett had gone out and watched the opening match and came back through. And he's bitching about Memphis, the canvas is still warm. But Owen, from the day we met, happy-go-lucky and laughing and cutting up, and we're going to go do this, but it's like we never had an introductory or warm-up. They came in the dressing room, hey Owen, dress around there. We were 2nd-generation guys, and I told him, I looked up to him kind of from day one. He was a year or 2 older than me, but I'm just like, all the promoters' kids, and he would chuckle, but all the promoters' kids that I met or been around, I'm like, I hope I don't turn out like that. But Owen was the real deal from the day that I met him. Always different, and so we bonded over being car rides, we would laugh and cut up, and he would do his Stu impersonation. Anyway, I can talk all night about that, because I miss him to this day.
There's this guy called Reg Parks, he makes belts, I think he's still alive, he makes like pro wrestling title belts, right? So Owen would call Stu like 2 in the morning, and be like, hey Stu, it's Reg Parks. I always thought I could take you, but you never gave me a shot. You scared me. And then he'd hang up.
His own father.
And then he called back. Hey, Stu, I'm waiting for you. You thought you could take me, Reg? Why didn't you try me? Meet me in the lobby. This is like 85-year-old Stu are going to meet Reg Parks in the lobby for a fight. Thanks, Owen.
The best.
Why didn't you try me?
Quickly, as a fanboy, I'm so honored to be in front of you guys. I've been a fan since middle school, and I used to call myself the chosen one to call people slap nuts in middle school. And I got a lot of trouble. So thank you for that.
Before you, who has the origin of the slap nuts?
Oh.
We want to know, right?
Jim Cornette talks about my grandmother, Christine Jarrett, so famous promoter, but she had a saying, and she, as all of us, get a little bit older, her patience would run thinner and thinner and thinner, but she used to call people slappies, and I'm like, Teeny, what's a slappy? Well, that's somebody who knows more and more about less and less. We would call it a complete bullshit artist. Teeny he's a slappy, but it's somebody who runs their mouth, slaps their gums together. So. I added nuts. See, it was the attitude era.
And finally, I got emotional when you spoke about your wife because I lost my mom to cancer 8 years ago, so I know that pain. And 8 years later, I'm still getting over it. Just making it touch. Anyway, my question: in terms of bringing this show, this is really to all of you as narrator and even sometimes the guest, producer, and people who just told their story. What do you find the most difficult part it is to tell this story to an audience without knowing how people might react to it or how people might take it in, because these are things that we're all learning now in real time that we might not have known 10 years ago.
Not to get too granular, but I have, for years, I didn't talk about the Owen situation. I glossed over it, and I always would divert it and say, if you want to talk about Owen, I'm going to talk about the man he is. I wouldn't talk about his death or anything like that. Then I went through a process and could talk about it more. But I've told different, I've been interviewed multiple times. The Dark Side, shout out again to a guy named Stu Stone, Stu, he asked me about that situation, and then I don't even remember, we have to go back and watch tape, but he asked a couple follow-up questions, and I finally really articulated, and when I saw the Vice social media piece they put out a week ago, whatever it was, when I heard it back, and I'm like, yeah, I did say that, because I had never articulated the fact that the thing that's the heaviest to me is that the understanding realization that I walked where Owen's body, the greater that his body made, and that was really heavy. So when they sent you down for these interviews, I don't know if y'all saw Ariel Hawani today. I did an interview with him, and guys that Ariel, like Stu, know the story, care passionately about it, understand, and can just kind of wait. And I got emotional with Stu. It's just I wear my emotions on my sleeve now, and I can tell you for 50 years, you couldn't get a drop of one tear out of my eye, and that wasn't me. A little different now, but very emotional. But it goes back to his team. The producers know how to I don't say craft a story, but produce and you want to say something? Because I don't do a good job of it. Very, very, very skilled at being a good interviewer.
Well, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question as an interviewer, if I can. But like that, for you, the whole experience of not talking about it, was that like a byproduct of like the culture, you think, of wrestling and just what was expected of masculinity and the wrestler and the tough guy?
And I will not speak for other folks, but I touched on it before, as a kid, parents divorced at 3 years of age. If I was gonna survive emotionally in my father's house, I had to talk shit about my mom's life. I had to talk shit about her and her family. And in my mom's house, I had to talk shit about my dad. And that was kind of emotional. So I learned at 3, 4, 5 years of age, Jeff can put on a mask, and when I needed to put on a mask, that's how I survived.
But you were also, I'm gonna cut in. 'cause I met
Oh,
those
here
men. You were raised by a grandmother that didn't show emotion. Your mom did not show emotion, besides anger probably towards your father for the business. And your dad for sure never showed emotions.
Yeah. I
So,
probably did.
it's, yeah, yeah.
I think there's also, once again, the key word, and one of the things that you didn't mention, Jeff, is respect. And it's the fact that Evan and his whole team have respect for these stories. And as a narrator, I don't know everything about the pro wrestling business, far from it. So I'm learning a lot. Like even the TNA side, I did not know the whole thing. There's another episode coming up later on the season about a guy called Rick Wilson. He was the Renegade in WCW, kind of an Ultimate Warrior knockoff. And I went to Japan with him once in the early 90s, barely knew anything about him. And, you know, I'm not going to say he was kind of a joke in the industry, but he was an Ultimate Warrior ripoff, right? And you're like, okay, whatever. Evan did such a great job in the team of putting together this really beautiful story about a guy who just wanted to be in the business. And that was the role that was offered to him. Any of us would have taken it if we would have had the opportunity. I would never be an Ultimate Warrior lookalike because I wasn't that silent for him. He took it. And who wouldn't have done it? You get a real respect for this guy and the people that loved him, the people that are talking about him. I haven't thought about the Renegade in 30 years, but I walked out of that going, I have respect for this guy. Because he just did what we all wanted to do, was to try and make it in the business that he loved. And that's, Evan and the guys and girls have done this time and time again with the episodes of Dark Side.